Um, well, how are you, man? Haven't talked to you in a while.
I'm pretty good. I'm busy as usual. I got a new website, so that was cool. I say got it, but I made it myself, so that was my December gift to myself. There's one bug that I haven't been able to figure out yet, but everything else, it's been a lot of good feedback on it. But yeah, how are you? What are
I'm doing very well. Still, I'm beating myself up because I've still got a big my manuscript for my book keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you know how it is in the self-publishing world. If you're not putting stuff out, you feel anxious and nervous and scared, and then I look at my word count and I realize that what I have in my computer is the equivalent of three of my other books of Kevin books. That if I had just maybe I don't know. So once I realized that I have this right now 36,000 word book in my computer, I was like, you know what? Yeah, it's not ready to be published, and I still have another chapter or two to write. By the time it's said and done, it's going to be bigger than it's going to be a normal like novel almost. So,
you?
so that's cool. But I was just looking, as you're looking at like 2004, what is it, 2015 now? It's like I only put out one book in 2015. And you know how self-publishing is. They're like, yeah, don't do that. You need to have more out sometimes. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that we're kind of past the point of spam as many books as you possibly can. They're just from the Facebook advertisements I get alone. That seems to be what everybody is saying. Like, you need to make 14,000 how to sell a book in order to make money selling books, and live your dream tomorrow. Your dream is writing ebooks. Just write ebooks and your dreams will come true, and you will have more ebooks and more dreams and more money. It's just, uh,
Yeah, you and I we must have the same Facebook
uh, yeah, I really think that we're now in the age of quality and trying to really just putting out, and I say this as a person who writes way too much and publishes way too much, just try to put out something quality and continue the cycle and still be fast. And if the next Dublin is the size of Harry Potter part 7, then so be it. Just throw it on kids' desks and be like,
well, that was kind of always the plan. Like in my mind, I was doing like, it's going to be like 4 parts, and then I'll release an omnibus after, part 4 is finished. So, in my head, I'd already, once I decided to continue the story and people had bothered me, that's not the right word, but they were like, we want another Dolben school book. I put out a Kevin book. I put out Baseball and Aliens, and people that I trusted were that had read my stuff were like, yeah, this is great. We want another Dolben school book. And I was like, okay, there we go. So that's my project. So that one's going to be finished, hopefully soon. And then I'll just get right on to the next one right after that. Because I was checking my sales like a lot of, self-publishers do. And I realized that the second Dolben book sells just as well as the Kevin books. And so, that was when I realized, okay, people are, and it's interesting, like it does very well for me in England. It's been a couple of times where I'll grab screenshots just for the fun of it because of the category that it's in. It'll be right next to a Neil Gaiman book a lot of times. And I think Neil Gaiman wrote a Doctor Who short story, and it appears in the same category as him. So occasionally, if enough people buy it in a short 72-hour period, I'm right next to Neil Gaiman. So I'll take that picture and just pat myself on the back.
awesome. Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, but yeah, it's but then I don't beat I was talking with another writer about it. So I still write every day. I get up and I'll write before I go to work in the morning. I'll write in the evenings after my daughter goes to bed for a little bit. So even though the new book hasn't hit the shelves yet, I'm still in that habit of doing it every day. And that was what I was teaching the kids about at the school that you and I visited the other day, was just to kind of do it get yourself started doing it every day. And one of the things, that I like to write about, people, when I talk with other teachers, they'll go, oh, well, I don't have any ideas. I'm not creative enough. And then I tell them that the way I do it, it comes from just doing it every day. And that the more I write, the more ideas you have. And it wasn't just this thing that came down from the heavens and appeared in your head. It came from, sitting down and putting your bottom in the chair, and putting your fingers to the keyboard and that kind of thing. Do you have people tell you kind of the same thing too when they look at you and go, I'm not that creative?
I've actually been coaching other authors and finishing their work, finishing their material, and everybody seems to have different but similar problems. On the one hand, everybody appears to have ideas, which is good, and even people who aren't creatives have ideas, and you get that a lot whenever you're like, oh, I'm an artist or a writer. People are like, oh my gosh, I have this incredible idea for a James Bond movie, and you're just like, I can't do anything with that, I'm sorry. But you're right, it is about showing up for the work. And even days like yesterday was just awful for me. I barely could get anything out of me. But I think as long as each day you do something to advance your career or advance yourself towards what you want, then that's a day that's progress. And I can't say that I write every day because I go through cycles of illustrating and writing. Or just, let's market for a week, or let's wallow in self-pity for a week. But as long as each day, I tweeted today, I did a Facebook today, I blog posted today, I had a Google Hangout, I wrote a chapter, I've been illustrating the new book. Then you're fine. You're just going along. But success and persistence, it's all about just showing up. And too many people, they get the satisfaction out of talking about the idea or talking about what they're going to do, rather than actually executing it, because it's very easy to get a pat on the back from somebody else from an idea.
Right.
They and I'm going to lose 50 pounds, and people are going to be like, that is fantastic. You're going to look fantastic. You're going to look awesome. And then you never go to the gym. You never eat better. You never do anything, because you've already gotten your kudos. So,
right.
I try not to tell people good job anymore.
Well, maybe tell them good job if they're actually going to the gym or, changing their habits. I mean, for I'm not an illustrator. Last summer I tried to teach myself some illustrations and just went, I got to stop that. But if you're doing it every day, that's exactly right. Yeah, sure, you might not be putting words down on paper, but if you're creating something for the next book and you're getting to be a better illustrator on top of it too, I mean, because you're improving your art there. Every day that I put words down, even if they'll eventually be removed, I'm at least getting in the habit of talking to characters. I've got this scene coming. I added a chapter to the new book because I was typing along and I went, oh wait, I need this to happen, and so I wrote a whole nother sports scene. Because for this time, for this book, I actually have it. I have it organized out, and I've seen debates on whether or not you should outline your book. And for this one, I have about a 5-page outline. Well, there's 5 pages of notes and a full page of outlines, and that I had each chapter. Chapter 1 does this, chapter 2 does this. And so I think I'm up to chapter 17, and the whole book is slated to be 19 chapters. And somewhere in there I went, I need another chapter for this to happen.
Definitely deadlines are more important than outlines.
Right.
Outlines, that really depends on the writer and the story. Because an outline has the same effect as telling a person your story, in that it can strangle the creative process.
Mm-hmm.
So you if your outline is too detailed and you don't allow any room for adventure, there's no real fun in writing it. At the same token, if you don't have any outline or any concept of where the story is going, you will ramble. So really, but the most important thing is to be like, this book needs to be done by February 5th and hold yourself to that.
Yeah, I think you might be right, because I think I'd hoped to get more done this past summer, and I just didn't do it. I was still, I still got stuff done this summer, but I didn't get what I'd hoped to get done. I'd written an outline for this book just because it has so many characters, and just the nature of the story, it needed to be outlined. None of the Kevin books have been outlined. And of course, if anybody's read them, they go, yep, he didn't outline those. But this one has so many characters and so many events going on. I had to at least sit down. I have a sheet of paper to go, oh, this happens. And also because it's taken me so long, I wouldn't have, I could have forgotten, or where of what was going to happen, so that now I can at least pull up the file and go, okay, this is what's happening next, and I can begin writing that chapter. So that helps. But you're right. Sometimes you certainly don't want to strangle the creativity. But like I said, I noticed as I was typing along in one chapter and went, I want to explore this more. And because the way I write, I like to have the chapter shortened. Some of the teachers you and I met with at the school said that they liked the books because the chapters were short. I said I need to have a separate chapter now and just explain this scene. And so that's how I worked with that. Future works may not have an outline, but when I have, when I have like 12, 14 characters, we need an outline.
I'm not going to use any periods in my next book. Freeform slam poetry from 1940s Harlem.
well, let's, the last time we, for anybody watching this, you and I actually met in person.
Yeah.
Up in Northern Virginia, and I'm sorry we didn't get to hang out more in person, but somebody has to go back to a day job the next day. I
didn't schedule it.
I understand. I'm not.
I'm going to complain here. I'm going to have an author complaint real quick. The bridge toll from going from Washington D.C. to Virginia is $16.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
yes, it
is. I'm sorry. I got off the airport. I rented the car. I'm like, okay, I know there's a toll booth. The map says there's a toll. I don't know how much toll it's going to be. So here's what I'm going to do. I don't have any cash on me. I'm going to go to Target and I'm going to get $20 cash back. I'm just going to buy like some chips or something. And then I'm going to go to Chipotle and I'm going to have them break it down. Okay, so I'm going to have a 10. I'm going to have 5 fives, and the rest is going to be quarters because I'm covered no matter what this toll is. And thank God I did.
And it's funny because you live in LA, and so I've never personally been to LA. I've been to California, but not out to LA. And so I guess one of the stereotype jokes is I do have college friends and graduate school friends that do live out in LA, and they'll talk about how bad the traffic is. But then here in Virginia, we talk about how bad the traffic is up in Northern Virginia, what you were just talking about. So it's interesting when the guy from LA complains about Northern Virginia traffic. There might be something.
I mean, DC was explicitly designed to confuse foreign emirates. So it's like there's something about Ronald Reagan where it's like you're suddenly in a neighborhood and then you turn off and go into like a full-fledged. And I ended up getting lost on the way back and was in Pentagon City. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, well, there's the Pentagon. It's just right there. And then you go down there and there's all these apartment buildings and high-rise buildings that are like luxury single occupancy month to month. And I'm just like, oh, this is the Pentagon. Like, it is bachelor country. Like, it's just, and And you know, Siri's just yelling at me on the you need to turn right back there, and I'm you know, I was like, okay, I'm in DC. I need to go and see at least one monument before I get on the plane. I'm 2 hours early, and the Paris attacks had just happened, and so you know, I'm in the Potomac River is flooding, and so the Jefferson. I went to the Jefferson Monument. I'm like, yes, Jefferson Monument. Get on the plane, just go. But no, that the to get back to the school visit, it was awesome. That was the fifth school visit I've done, and it was the most intense because they really were like, we've got authors, we're gonna use them. It was like, what did we do, 8 classes? That was,
yeah, let's see, we did kindergarten, at least I'm assuming we all did the same thing, kindergarten through 6, so that was 7 classes. And then of course, because the way resources, or as that school called them, specials, they don't start till later in the day. So you know, we did 1, then they're like, here's your lunch, now get ready because here comes 6 more classes.
I love the kindergartners. We got through the Monster Ate My Socks very quickly, and then they kind of couldn't. We lost them after like 15 or 30 minutes, and they formed. It was interesting to watch because it looked like Mercury. They just kind of formed their own little groups, and then started meandering like cats. They were adorable. Second grade was the most mature of all of the grades. I was surprised by that because I had the books out. I had Soaked, Ink Bats, I Don't Want to Go to School, and Monster Ate My Socks, and I was just like, you guys pick which book you want to read. And I Don't Want to Go to School was the most popular one, which I kind of got a kick out of it because they're all together saying, I don't want to go to school, and they're in the library, and the teachers are eyeballing me, and I'm just like, okay, like, but the second graders actually started reading Soaked, which was really impressive. And then by the time we got to the 5th graders, we had reverted back to I Don't Want to Go to School, and that's all they wanted to read or listen about. And I was just like okay.
Well, again, yeah, because see, when I met with the kids, you know, I read the first Kevin book because the way I approached it was kind of like the way, well, it's exactly what the way the blog post that you had tweeted out about is what I did. You know, reading Kevin and the 7 Lions, I talked about, you know, related it back to the kids, saying, you know, hey, you know, I'm a teacher, I admit it. You know, sometimes our minds wander. And I wrote the book to kind of as a positive way of how to handle it. I also wrote it as to not make the teachers the bad people, you know, the villains all the time. When there's a story behind that one too. But we just talked about ideas. And then essentially what we did was, what I did was talk about, it's a lesson I do in my own classes every year, was to come up with, they come up with a love list, you know, or things that I love, and then they come up with the things we call it loathe list in 5th grade, things they don't like. And so they have all these different things that they love that they can write about. They can have all these things that they loathe, that they hate, that they can also write about. And then to really bring it all together, you can then combine one thing from one part of the list and another thing from the other list, and you combine them and you get some idea mating there, and now all of a sudden you've got a third thing to write about. And so the 6th grade group, I remember very distinctly, had come up, somebody silly had I wouldn't say silly, I wouldn't, but they were just playing around it, and I think one little girl went, or she's not little, she's in 6th grade, she goes, I hate turtles. So for some reason, so I put up on the board, all right, turtles. And one of the boys had listed on there football. And so as we were working through our lesson, wrapping it up, we combined, I said, all right, and so I turned to the board and said, all right, we can take turtle and football. And now all of a sudden, in their head, you could see it through their head going, wait a minute, I now have this picture of turtles playing football. And so now I've taken 2 different ideas, 2 very separate ideas, and now I have a new thing. And then even from there, the kids started talking about, oh, that's kind of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And that there was like this big thing. We realized that's exactly what Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is. It's essentially 4 ideas, you know, teenage mutants, ninjas, and turtles. And all of a sudden you take those 4 very separate ideas you've got this, this gigantic franchise on you. And so what, and I've started teaching that with, in my class, is that the idea of, in Mr. Tiller's class, even when I taught first grade for several years, and now I teach fifth grade, because you have like teaching that idea, there should never be any time in my class where you're like, Mr. Tiller, I don't have anything to write about. No, you have this list at the beginning of your thing, at the beginning of your writing journal, all these things you like, all these things you don't like. If you've done those, now combine them, and so that was our big lesson. And then I just read my way through, the first Kevin book, and then would stop and ask questions, and that kind of thing was how I handled it. And I felt bad for the kids that came to see me, because I took their gym time, and so here's their normal day of the week to go to PE, and of course all the kids are like, "Yay, I'm going to gym," and then they see me in there. Okay, so I would have to stop.
Jumping jacks. It's all everybody's gonna work out, and read, and
So I literally during my presentation several times would have them stop and get up and do jumping jacks, or part of the lesson was to stand up or run in place, and then sit back down or read the story, or get up and move around, because I knew that if I just had them sit on the gym floor for 40 minutes, I was a dead man. So that comes from experience of what I do every day. But yeah, it really was. I agree with you. It really was a lot of fun, and it was good to make connections there with the librarian, dropping off books for them. For other writers that are seeing this, what do you notice anytime that you visit a school? Do you notice any increases in sales? Can you tell, or what do you notice? Or does it happen at all?
You do get a bump. It's slight. What it's really good for is to grow your brand recognition. Mm-hmm. To gain your notoriety. I did a school visit, and then did another visit the returning year up in Encino, and it was interesting because you had kids that came up and they're like, "Oh, I remember you. I remember your books." And I've had people reach out to me because of the school visit that we did, and I don't know how to really gauge, like, okay, this on X day, this sales spikes increase, but I know that it does increase. It's hard to do empirical like testing, but there's definitely a spike. It's definitely worthwhile. And I'd say of all of the conventional advertising methods that we have at our disposal, that's one of the most potent ones. It really is it's the most validating one too, because
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that was my first school. Well, first formal school visit outside of a school that I'm employed in, there was definitely an increase in paperback sales, and for those that other writers out there that may focus more on their Kindle sales, if you get to go to a school, schools are still going to be buying paperbacks, and so so for any writers or authors watching this, doing a school visit, you're going to need paperbacks. You can't just show up with a Kindle. It fascinates me that sometimes people are like, I still see writers, and I'm like, no, you need a paperback. You need a paperback. Because there's almost something, there's something special about handing a physical book to somebody. And then, as you and I noticed, when you have people request you to sign it, that's extraordinary too. I know that there are ways to sign a Kindle version, but I've not done one, and I don't think it has
I just signed the Kindle. I just.
Oh, you signed the actual Kindle? I think
I've done that a couple of times, but yeah, that's not really. But there is kind of a refocusing on print right now, which is interesting to note, and I'm paying much more attention to the print market as well with the next release. But another thing that I got out of the school visit, particularly with Potomac, was I got feedback on I don't want to go to school, And I suddenly understood like what parts the kids are really connecting with, why this book has been popular, and a lot of left field questions that influenced the next book. One thing that caught me off guard was a little girl that asked me why all of the characters are bald. Why does only one have? And for me, it was just like I hate to say it, it was an artistic laziness decision, because it's much easier to draw a bald head in a cartoon form than it is to draw hair. But it's that kind of question of like, oh, I never would have thought of that. I thought that people would just accept it and just move on. And you really kind of see points like okay, I understand now why a picture book should be shorter, because it can be exhausting to read with a child that is struggling with it, or if a child that wants to move on to the next thing, or if it's a 15 kindergartners and you've already lost their attention span, even if they love the book, even if it's the best book in the world, after about 10 minutes of kind of going back and forth, it's time to move on to the next thing. And so that was incredibly valuable, and that's informed the sequel to I Don't Want to Go to School, which is what I'm currently working on, and hope to have it out by the end of January. But it follows, the characters have hair now. All the characters have hair. And it follows a much more clean call and repeat form, so that when I go back and do readings, or whenever the children are reading it with their parents, it's much more palpable. It's much more easier on the reader, which I don't think I would have ever known that if I hadn't done a school reading or the subsequent book fairs. So that was probably the biggest thing I got out of visiting Potomac. Besides meeting Beverly finally. I love Beverly. She's an amazing person. She's probably watching this right now. But I really do think that if you want to take yourself seriously as a children's book author, you need to go out there and meet children. And I know that sounds like so duh. It sounds so apparent, but a lot of writers that I've spoken to barely have an interaction with their audience. And it's that just at this point, that just seems like you don't know your market. You don't know who you're writing for.
I almost get this in sometimes when I've been introduced to other people that they have an idea for a children's book, that it's almost like they think it's easy, that it's short, and so I've written a children's book, and I did it this afternoon. And
it rhymes.
Exactly. And I'm like, good for you. Not realizing, that writing a novel is different from writing a picture book. And because they're two different pieces of art, they're two, and part of what I do, or I guess part of my background helps me, is that I understand reading level. I actually know what makes this a first grade reading level. I know what this makes a second grade reading level. And so I know how to make the words either too complex or not complex enough, or the sentences, how long they need to be. And so that helps me. But then I'll run into people and they'll send me their work and they won't have any idea, or they're struggling with, I have these wonderful pictures and here's a cute story. And I'm like, yeah, a first grader ain't going to be able to read this.
Indubitably.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And and the blog post that I've written for you that you've tweeted out a couple of times is I tell other teachers, that's almost becoming my thing of telling other teachers they actually have a background to be able to write books for kids because they read so many of them. They read several of them. In some cases, a first grade teacher, when I taught first grade, I would literally read on a vanilla average day 4 books. I would read one whole book to the class altogether, and then I would meet with 3 different groups during the day, and each group would have a different book. So literally on a normal, non-eventful day while teaching first grade, I would read 4 books. And so after several years of that, I had the understanding and the how that worked, and the Kevin books were born out of that. And so that's why I get compliments from other teachers and other librarians that part of it's my background. And because it's my background, I'm lucky enough, you're talking about having your having the kids with the visits. I mean, I had a captive audience a couple years ago. I read the first Dolan school book to my class. Part of our daily schedule was to just have a read aloud, and so I would read that to them, and I got extraordinary feedback from them. They cheered at the right time, they gasped at the right time, and I had one kid that just he was so in love with the story that instead of going to recess or hanging out with his friends, he would stand beside me during recess and talk about what the world and what the next book would be. And so I gave him credit inside the Dark Cloud Rises. I gave for his ideas of what for the book. But the funny thing was, speaking on ideas, he gave out so many. I would go, nope, that doesn't work. Nope, that doesn't work. And I would explain why, because the universe had rules. And then it would be funny to listen to later in the year. He would talk to other kids about the Dolman School and say, no, you can't do that. That doesn't work. So he almost became an expert himself on it, which is why I wish more teachers did it, because the ability to have your audience right there and to see when kids get it is extraordinary. And so I'm very lucky to have that. For you, I would recommend, opening yourself up like what you've done with school visits and getting to know other teachers there in LA, maybe, or even just asking, ask teachers in LA, if you know of any, but you've done enough. But
no, I need to randomly call up schools and be like, do you mind if a complete stranger comes in and speaks to children for an hour and a half?
Well, I wasn't sure, maybe if whatever. Well, even what I would do, is just for your future work, if you happen to know of any, I mean, you can send them to me or through email, but even just send them to other teachers you may know. Even if they're not in LA, you could still send like a copy of and say, what do you think in terms of like pacing, length of chapters, complexity of sentences, that kind of thing. I can go, teachers could go through it and go like, this word might be easy for you, but it's going to be hard for English language learners. It's going to be harder for this kind of thing, or maybe you might want to try this word. So you just kind of a different feedback when you go through that. I'm just tossing out ideas here. I'm just tossing out ideas here. One thing I wanted to ask you about. I'm hearing dinner being made downstairs. So I got a few more minutes here. Tell me about. Can we talk about the Dolce project that I saw you mentioned, or you will?
Is it Dolce or Dolce?
I've always. Now personally, I've always just pronounced it Dolce, but I know that some people might. That's how I pronounce it. You're the first person in my entire career that's asked me that. I went. I'm just always pronouncing that.
LCHE for the people who are taking notes.
I'm gonna have some literacy specialists email me.
And it's based off of the Dolce were in the early 30s. It was a linguist who determined at what point children should learn what words, and he came up with these different categories based upon like pre-primer, which would actually be kindergarten or even pre-kindergartner, primer, which would be kindergarten, first grade, second grade, on and on. And the list that I'm working off are called the sight words, which are the words that a child is supposed to recognize by visual cues alone, by the letters, because they're words like yellow, which words that have a difficult meaning to try to find in context. You can't just see, you can't understand like you could what a car is by saying, the person is driving in a car. You could figure out what car is, but these are words like, they're surprising, like yellow, blue, red, jump. Words that you're trying to very beginning teaching kids, like, memorize these words. You're going to come across them, and they will help you understand the English language better. So, typically, teachers bring them out in lists, and it's like, here's this big list of things to do. But Beverly had the idea of actually a lot of this was her idea. Beverly teaches remedial reading. She goes in and volunteers with these kids, and she was like, I'm like, well, what do you need? What would be a good tool? Thinking a book or something. She's like, well, I need a video that teaches the Dolch words so that I can give the one-on-one experience to an entire group of children at once, rather than having to go individually. Because if you can, and also a DVD that the children could take home, watch on their own. The majority of the children that she's familiar with and that I've heard from, they have a DVD player. They may not have a Kindle. They may not have an iPad or things like that, but they definitely have a DVD player. Every house in America has that. So this is the first DVD of a series that I want to do that goes over each of the Dolch words. And wonderful. All it is it's a 14-minute movie. It has a soundtrack. It will show the word and say the word, and then it has an illustration with the word and the illustration of the word used in a sentence. Yes, and then it repeats the word, and then it goes on. The first DVD has, I think it's 42 of the words in the first one, and it's 15 minutes long, give or take. Has an original soundtrack. It has the same art style as I Don't Want to Go to School. Cool. So bald people. I just got the proof back. I think last week after Christmas. I'm still deciding whether or not I'm looking at some of the video issues if the compression suits me or not. So that's why it hasn't been announced formally yet. But that's the project. Once it releases, it's going to be $13 or $12.99 plus shipping and handling. I don't know if it's copyable. I made the ISO to be copyable, but I don't know. But I wanted to make it affordable enough that anybody could get it, and entertaining enough that you'd actually want to watch it. So the feedback so far has been great. The kids that have watched it have loved it. Beverly has a tester copy, and she's been has the kids watch it. So that's one of the projects, or that's something. Once I get some feedback from my fan base or from buyers, I'll do the next one. I answered everything, or I'm just kind of rambling. I don't know.
No, that's good. No, because because I'd made the mistake on Facebook when the picture that I just looked at and I thought it was a book, and I thought he's made a workbook, and then you said, "Oh, it's a DVD," and I was like, and I wrote back, "Oh, I made a mistake." So that was on my list of things to ask you about, was the DVD project. So that sounds pretty cool, and that and I could talk for another hour about that, but the idea of, like, you can take your work and then put it into other projects, just simply, so like you're making the Dolch videos, and I mean that, and kids and teachers and kids are going to get to know your work. If they haven't read your books before, they're going to see your name, they're going to see your illustrations, they're going to see your work there, and they'll make the connection with the book that it's based on. And I'm not thinking this in an evil way, but I'm just thinking, like, I have one of my projects that I kind of thought about was, I think I take I always kind of tell this to people, but my first Kevin book is a Kindle book, it's a paperback, and it's an audio book. So the same story, but it's sold as 3 different products. And then a friend of mine from college has directed a couple of like local plays, or I guess in her area, a couple of local playhouses, and that's I guess just community theater is what I'm looking for. And so I had this thought, I was like, because I've seen a couple of community theaters do like children's plays, and I thought, wait a minute, I could take my book, and kind of do a story and turn that into a play. And so that's not the next project, but there's the idea. You create one thing, and then as a creator, you can format it into different ways. And my friend had given me some ways of some approaches to be able to do it. She told me first to write a script, and then she would help me write the stage direction, and then go from there. Then you could almost have your, like an independent play that way as well. But it just kind of was a thought, kind of a thought that way.
Yeah, I'm having like the most horrible ideas right now. Just like because the other video project that I want to do besides Adulch is a video adaptation of The Little Bleeble.
Yes. One of that's anybody watching. That's personally one of my favorites of yours.
Really?
Yeah.
Thank you. No, just to go back to the reading thing and just have it a book on DVD, which used to be very popular. There was a Laserdisc series that was just famous celebrities reading books.
Mm-hmm.
And just have like a bouncing thing to follow along with the reading, which could be easy. It's easy enough to do. And Little Bleeble.
I taught first grade. There's a series of you could do it because when I'm sitting here, I'm flashing back to a couple of years ago when I taught first grade. There was Betty White reading a book.
Yeah.
Sean Astin read a book. We had one, and I would just pull them off of YouTube. And then put them up on my Promethean board in the classroom. And what you could do, you could set up your own, YouTube channel, you reading all your books, and then doing exactly what you just said, where you would have the words, and then you could have the bouncing things, and then that's another way to be able to do it.
Can I
like it never stops in here. So, but I think it's me being tired at the end of a workday too. So,
it's raining. It's been raining in LA. We're all going to die soon. So.
Where I live, all the teachers are hoping for snow here soon. So it's all of a sudden we had a very warm winter. Now all of a sudden we're back to normal 32 degrees and 32, not even 32. The kids weren't allowed to go outside for recess the other day because it was too cold. That was fun. That was a good day. When the principal comes on over the speaker saying, yeah, it's just too cold. Nobody will be going out today. And of course, my fifth graders, they've got recess at the end of the day, and they're still asking me, Mr. Till, are we not going outside? Nope. So,
man.
Well, when it's 30 degrees outside, you don't go. So that's just kind of one of those things. All right, well, I'm looking forward to the new book. I'm going to need to head out here. It's good to catch up with you. And when the DVD gets ready, definitely send me a copy. I'll get a copy.
Okay.
I'll get a copy. I'll buy a copy. That's what I meant to say. That's what I meant to say. That's what I said. All right, man.
Rolling in the royalties.